Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Wednesday evening. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about how, at least I think, the Democrats have now officially lost the government shutdown kind of gambit they played a few months ago. A few weeks ago, we did an episode called Are the Democrats Winning the Shutdown? And, a few people wrote in saying, yes, no, kinda, no one's winning, and all fair points, but I think, now that it's kind of coming to an end with the 8 Democrats, so I guess 7 plus 1 independent, Angus King, voting to, accept the Republicans' proposed continued resolution, the CR, right, then I think we can now evaluate it, and I think it's safe to say they have lost. So we're going to break down why, and we've got a lot to talk about, so without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so for those who are wondering, government shutdown, right, just really quick, high level, is basically a lapse in annual appropriations, aka where money should be spent, right? That's what Congress does, so sometimes they fight, they can't agree, you get a shutdown. You often also hear this word, I just said it a second ago, a continued resolution, or a CR, which is basically a Band-Aid, right, a temporary patch to try to just kick the problem down the road. And this has basically been how Congress has dealt with these appropriation bills for a long, long time because they can't agree on this stuff. I mean, you guys have all heard about it, right? Every so often you'll hear something in the news, oh my God, the government might shut down, And then the night before they sign a CR and then it kicks down and here we go. And this has basically been what's been in vogue most of the time. This time, it didn't happen, right? The Democrats didn't give them the 60-40 vote that they need, and we got a shutdown. In fact, it's the longest shutdown in American history. So why, again, did the government shut down according to the Democrats? Well, their main thing were these ACA tax credits, which basically the ACA, right, Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, a newer kind of thing was giving different tax benefits and tax credits. It actually happened in COVID, basically just reducing the costs of medical care. Conservatives said it was covering, illegals and stuff like that. That's not true. It did cover people who have gained asylum. And so they're here legally through that. Some of the people that qualify for this. And, of course, some conservatives say, well, they shouldn't have gotten approved with their asylum. But, that's hard to say depending on each person. And there are a lot of people that, qualify for this that aren't that. So anyways, this was the kind of sticking point for the Democrats. I mean, I'm sure some of you who are listening have seen Bernie freaking out about it because basically several studies have shown that if we got rid of this tax thing, a lot of people will not be able to afford very necessary medical care and will get sick or could die. And, there's all these projections of how many people may die from this. And, it's hard to know that. But, I mean, obviously, making medical care more expensive means less people can afford it, which means more people could get sick and not get the care they need. I don't think that's a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around. And before we go into, why I'm going to launch into why I think the Democrats have officially lost this gambit, we can call it, we should probably define what winning would look like, right? So basically, A, they've banked all of their energy on a policy that they had to see get passed, or B, public opinion is so in your favor that you've completely gotten the momentum from the action, right? So what has changed since we did this episode? So a few weeks ago, we did an episode saying, are the Democrats winning? I think it had already become the longest or was about to become the longest shutdown in history. And like I said, there was a lot of debate. The polls are basically saying, they blame each other equally. No one's really happy. And things are starting to get kind of grumpy. Well, things had changed on that front over the last few weeks. I had started noticing, while maybe not the polls has shown this, just in my anecdotal personal life, people who are maybe listening to the show, friends of mine, who are typically either apolitical or even right-leaning, kind of getting grumpy about it. And I think it really kind of crystallized actually over last weekend during the Washington Commanders Detroit Lions game, where freaking Trump went into the broadcast booth for 10 minutes, right? And he was rambling, doing his normal thing. And, people have shown clips of the stadium booing them. Yeah, football fans, they'll boo, whatever. But, I have many group chats, and many of my friends were like, hey, I can't believe Trump's in the freaking booth when the government's closed. Open the damn government. And again, these are guys who are typically making comments like this. It's not like my liberal little chat where they're all, freaking out. So this is interesting to me. So it's kind of the first sign, at least in my personal life, that people were starting to realize that Trump doesn't give a crap about anyone, and he couldn't be bothered to fix this stuff, even though he, rambles and rants on Truth Social. So it was starting to work. I think it didn't work when we talked about it last, but I do think there was a tangible difference. And also, it's hard to not look at the recent elections, right? These big Democrat wins in New York, Virginia, freaking New Jersey. And while I don't think they won because of the shutdown, I do think you could make the case that they are related. And I do think you can make the case that it started to show a little bit of gall from the Democratic Party, which especially young voters and more progressive voters, like myself, well, I don't know, young, young, I guess is, depends on how old you are listening, but it does show you that, we want the Democratic Party to have a spine. And it was kind of exciting to see some little momentum going. And what do you know? They caved immediately. You can't go more than a week, right, without having any good news with these guys. It's got to be the worst group we've ever seen, at least the worst group given the circumstance that we're in. We've never needed leadership more. We are just getting absolutely hosed by these guys. So like I said, what happened basically was the Senate has now moved to a continuing resolution, right, to reopen the government through late January, so for the next few months, without the ACA enhanced premium tax credit extension that they had so cherished enough to actually shut the government down. So what they did get, I guess, in return, if you can even count it as anything, is they promised that the Senate will vote on these later. That's literally the words. And it doesn't even guarantee that the House will vote on it. So, just FYI, right? It has to go to the House. If it got approved in the Senate, it goes to the House, and then, the president has to sign it. None of this is locked, right? None of this is guaranteed. All of this stuff is just, the only thing they got, right, is this promise of a vote on this. So that's it, basically. That's it. So if we look at, scoreboard, basically, just thinking, what happened? The government reopens, and the thing they fought for didn't happen, right? Policy loss, for sure. Public opinion, not good. Now the Democratic Party is mad at itself again, which, lovely. Obviously, from an economic point of view, shutdowns are terrible. They tend to come back to life when activity comes back to life, but some of the losses are permanent, right? So in the past, like the shutdown in 2018 to 2019, we saw an $11 billion total hit, with $3 billion of it being permanent. We don't know, right, the current damage, but this is the longest shutdown of all time, so it's fair to say that multi-billion-dollar negative impact to the economy. So not a win there. So lose, lose, lose. And I think the biggest kind of piece of offensiveness, it's not really English, but the thing that offends me the most, right, about who voted for this, right? Who were the people who crossed the lines to pass the CR, right? It was the following. It was Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada. We have Dick Durbin from Illinois. We have John Fetterman from Pennsylvania. Shocker. We have Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire. We have Tim Kaine from Virginia. We have Jackie Rosen from Nevada. We have Jeanine Shaheen. I always get her name. Jeanine Shaheen from New Hampshire, and Angus King, who's technically a independent from Maine. So those are the 8. What is so telling about this is that none of the 8 Senate people, who those I just listed, are on the ballot in 2026, with two of them, Dick Durbin and Jeanne Shaheen, already announcing that they're not running for Senate again. So what they've done, and it's not really that sneaky here, even though Chuck Schumer is denying this and saying, oh, I would never vote yes, we're going to keep this and that, and blah, blah, blah. They clearly got together through Schumer, right, because he's the minority leader, and picked what they deemed the safest 8 Democrats, the ones who are not running or literally not up for election, so to vote yes. And it's so obvious and so insulting because, one, they don't think you have the attention span and the memory to remember this come when they're up for debate. Because remember, Senate terms are 6 years. And two, it's once again Chuck Schumer just giving in and losing all of his spine once again and just trying to pretend and lie to us that he is a spine. Honestly, getting a little ranty here, but I don't want to hear the word fight or fighting out of any of these guys for at least 3 more years, but potentially ever until the majority of them have been replaced. I mean, it is so insulting to the Democratic Party, and it is just such a sign how bad, just how bad of a job Chuck Schumer is doing as Senate Minority Leader. I've whined and complained about how he refused to endorse Zoran. I've whined and complained how he has not motivated a single cell in this country. But to actively try to deflect this by doing this little ploy, thinking that we're just so dumb as, people, is one of the reasons why the Democratic Party is so freaking unpopular. I'm not just talking about within its own base, because, I'm sure a lot of the liberal people here feel the same way I do. It's a big reason why independents and reasonable conservatives don't even think about the Democrats, because they just feel like they're lying all the time. And I know what you're saying. I know, oh, well, Trump lies all the time. No one lies more than Trump. And it's true. Trump lies an unbelievable amount. I mean, he's the biggest liar ever. But because he lies so frankly, it comes off genuine, because it's kind of, covered in New Yorker charm and TV host wit. And while obviously he's lying all the time, that isn't what people actually care about. They care about the perception and vibes. And these people and the Democratic leadership, the corporate Democrats, right? Not just Chuck Schumer, but like the corporate Democrat bone, clearly think we're too dumb to realize when they're lying to us, similarly to how they did when they said, oh, Biden's debate, oh, just one bad night, he's fine, what are you talking about? And they rallied against people who said that Biden should step down. It's in that same vein. Obviously, it's not as extreme as that, but it's in the same idea of them just thinking that, we just don't have a brain. And again, it's such a turnoff, and it's such a reason why the Democratic coloring just has bad vibes attached to it, even if, obviously, in my opinion, they're behind more good policies than bad, especially when compared to Trump and or just Republican, to the GOP in general. So it's a bummer. It's definitely a bummer. It's basically given the GOP a win, right? They now get to, again, not give the ACA benefits that they don't want to give, and they can just continue as usual. And the thing is that I think what I don't think people realize, who are kind of these moderate, traditional, kind of classic Democrat, conservative, corporate Democrat kind of people, who are smart people, it's not that they're not smart. They don't realize that a lot of this bipartisanship stuff doesn't actually resonate with Republicans as much as they think they do. Republicans don't propose bipartisan law ever, or get bipartisan law passed ever. It's always Democrats caving, or Democrats coming up with some watered down version. And this has not done anything for the party. And it's really, again, this weird false understanding that this working together thing like is actually the best way forward, because it should be. But when only one side is really doing it, then it doesn't really matter. And ultimately, it's clear that they just cave to the pressure because they are not a party with a spine. And that is unfortunately the thing we need to remember come the midterms, not just for the overall elections, but these primary elections, because, these guys just need to be challenged. I mean, and I don't know who they think they're fooling. There's going to be a real deployment, I think, of millennial and Gen Z candidates coming up these times around. And I just don't see a world where these old-timey thinking kind of corporate people are going to keep their job for much longer, because I don't think anyone is being fooled by this song and dance. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review on whatever, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. YouTube, please let me know what you think. Do you think I'm right? Do you think the Dems lost? Do you think they actually won and they just had to cave? I'm really, really curious. You can also write me in at thelonelyliberaLpodcast@gmail.com. I'd really appreciate that as well. I love reading all those emails. I'm getting more and more lately. It's awesome. Yeah, but anyways, we'll be back on Sunday with another show, and with Rick, right? Reading the news and stuff like that. Got a lot to talk about per usual, so that'll be fun. And until then, have a good week. Keep it up, Keep cruising. You're cruising out there. Keep it up. I'll talk to you later. Bye.